A couple will appear in court tomorrow in connection with the baby corpses in glass jars case. The annual session of the country's top political advisory body closes in Beijing. And preparations for sending much-needed food to the Gaza Strip by sea. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. A man and a woman were charged with illegal handling of corpses after the remains of 2 male babies were discovered in glass jars left in a Two Moon apartment on Friday. According to a forensic autopsy report, the deceased babies were between 24 and 30 weeks old. A couple arrested by the police in connection with the case will appear at Fanling Magistrates Court tomorrow. Mimosa Guy reports.
The tragic tale of the 2 dead male babies at Mayhem Building in Two Moon continued to unfold. Police confirmed the babies were between 24 and 30 weeks old based on the initial result of a forensic autopsy. The cause and the time of death of the infants remain unknown. The police cannot confirm if they were stillborn. The babies were found in 2 glass jars filled with liquid. However, authorities said what that liquid is also remains a mystery at this stage.
身上咧係冇明顯嘅傷。
Chief Inspector of the New Territories North Regional Crime Unit, Au Yuan-tak, said further tests are needed, including a toxicology report to find answers to the questions. Meanwhile, the police official said they have not found any birth records for the 2 infants at public or private hospitals. He reminded residents to seek advice from professional healthcare workers when it comes to pregnancy. The arrested couple, aged 24 and 22, have each been charged with 2 counts of illegal handling of corpses. On Friday, the police received a report from a cleaner saying the remains of 2 babies were found inside glass jars in an apartment at Mayhem Building. The jars were placed on the floor of the living room. The couples, who were tenants of the unit, moved out recently. News 9 TVB News.
The review of the Safeguarding National Security Bill continued at the Legislative Council today, as lawmakers strengthened efforts to achieve a swift implementation of the city's security law. Addressing concerns about the illegal disclosure of classified documents or information, the government emphasized the law will mainly target public officials who leak false information, causing public unrest. Timothy Lee tells us more.
The Legislative Council entered its 3rd day of scrutinizing the Safeguarding National Security Bill today. Lawmakers raised concerns about the security law's articles related to offenses of illegally disclosing confidential information. Many questioned whether the article will confuse such leaked information with state secrets.
The situation we are trying to cover is a public officer releasing false information which are held out to be confidential matters. An extreme example is this. Let's say I'm an officer from the security department. I have created a false document with a stamp of confidential on it, stating that tomorrow a foreign country will launch an attack on Hong Kong, and I disseminate the information. It is obviously untrue. If he's deliberately doing this and people believe it, it would cause chaos in society.
For example, if I say that the budget is going to hand out cash of $30,000, I may not be found unlawful, is that correct? One may not breach the law, but one may be in violation of the Civil Service Code.
The article also states that anyone who goes near, inspects, or enters a military facility will be considered as committing an act of espionage. Some lawmakers question the extent of the law's application.
If someone asks these amateur photographers to take a photograph of the military base and give it to them, the photographer do not know about the intents of those who consign the project. So will they be committing the offense? If you take a photograph of the facade of the military facility, or if you simply walk by with no intent to endanger national security, then it is not an offense.
The government stressed those who intentionally sell photos of military facilities to groups endangering national security will be subject to legal consequences. Authorities noted restricted areas will provide clear instructions to prevent public entry. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The government issued a statement today condemning the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation, calling it an anti-China organization. The administration said the group blatantly requested the U.S. to sanction Beijing and SAR officials, especially those taking part in the Article 23 legislative work. The statement wrote that the Foundations Act may constitute the offense of collusion with a foreign country or with external elements to endanger national security under the Hong Kong National Security Law. The government spokesperson singled out the Foundation's core member, Hui Wing-ting, who is wanted by the police. It said that their campaigns demonstrated the necessity of Article 23 legislation. The Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or CPPCC, concluded its annual session in Beijing today. Attended by President Xi Jinping, the closing meeting was led by CPPCC National Committee Chairman Wang Huining. The meeting approved the top political advisory body's work report among a series of draft resolutions. They include a political resolution reaffirming the implementation of the one country, two systems principle in Hong Kong and Macau, while consolidating and expanding the patriotic United Front. Wang also called on CPPCC members to tell a good China story, including the country's modernization, which also benefits the rest of the world. Sweden said it would resume donations to the UN agency aiding Palestinians. Oslo follows Canada and the European Union after dozens of countries stopped funding UNRWA on Israeli allegations that the body employed people involved in the October 7th attacks on Israel. UNRWA is hopeful of more funding in the coming weeks as Palestinians in Gaza face starvation because of a lack of aid going into the coastal territory. The U.S., meanwhile, is taking the first steps in building a temporary port off Gaza to ease seaborne aid supplies. Naswi Karim with more.
Before I begin, I want to say thank you.
At an election rally in Atlanta, U.S. President Joe Biden is interrupted by a pro-Palestinian supporter, calling him Genocide Joe. The heckler is quickly drowned out by chants of 4 more years and taken away by security. Biden was sympathetic.
Look, I don't resent his passion. There's a lot of Palestinians who are being unfairly victimized.
With the Gaza Strip afflicted by a humanitarian crisis, the Biden administration has joined the likes of Jordan, Egypt, France and Belgium in airdropping food and supplies into the territory. The north of Gaza is particularly bad, with hundreds of thousands of Palestinians on the brink of famine. Gaza officials say 25 people have died of malnutrition, the latest being a 2-year-old infant. Reports say a U.S. Army ship left Joint Base Langley Eustis in Virginia, heading for the region with the first pieces of equipment needed to build a temporary port off the Gaza coast. In Cyprus, the open arms vessel named after the Spanish aid agency is set to leave its Larnaca port with 200 tons of food and supplies for Gaza. Despite an international effort to step up aid deliveries to Gaza, it's only a drop in the ocean as hundreds of supply trucks wait at crossings. Agencies say Israel is not providing enough security for trucks inside Gaza amid a breakdown of law and order. This man in Gaza City says many areas where the airdrops fall are isolated, and some of the parachutes fall and drown in the sea, and no one gets anything. Meanwhile, in the southern district of Rafah, an Israeli airstrike hit a 12-story residential building housing more than 300 people. No injuries were reported, though strikes elsewhere killed 82 people, taking the death toll since October 7 to almost 31,000. Also in Rafah, Palestinians are preparing for the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan, which starts tonight or tomorrow. This woman said it would be a sad Ramadan because they are living in an atmosphere of war and many of their loved ones have died. Nevertheless, children gather to sing songs and celebrate the start of the holy month and praying for an end to the war. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said on Saturday that he would propose to Parliament that the country recognize a Palestinian state. Sanchez added his voice to a chorus of other European leaders and government officials who support a two-state solution. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he is opposed to a Palestinian state after the war. Speaking at a rights conference in Bilbao, Sanchez says Spain demanded respect for international law from Russia and from Israel, for the violence to end and recognition of two states, and for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. He said that his position on the conflict in the Gaza Strip is much like his country's support for Ukraine following Russia's full-scale invasion more than 2 years ago. The U.S. military said coalition forces shot down at least 28 drones over the Red Sea on Saturday, a day after Yemen's Houthi group targeted a Singapore-flagged vessel. The Houthis set off explosions ahead of the bulk carrier propelled Fortune, with a spokesman saying they also targeted U.S. destroyers in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden with 37 drones. The U.S. military said the propelled Fortune was able to continue on its voyage and no injuries or damage were reported. A multinational force, including Britain and France, is patrolling the region in an attempt to prevent the Houthis from attacking vessels along this important shipping lane. The Houthis say they are targeting ships linked to U.S., British, and Israel in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. On Wednesday, 3 crew members were killed in an attack on another commercial ship in the Gulf of Aden. Pope Francis says in an interview that Ukraine is facing a possible defeat in its war against Russia and should negotiate an end to the fighting, saying they must have the courage of the white flag. David Garrett reports.
The aftermath of a Russian attack that injured a 7-year-old near the Dnipro River. Authorities there say it is a daily event for those in eastern Ukraine. The war with Russia is at a stalemate after more than 2 years. Russian troops have increased pressure on Ukrainian positions in the east. Western weapons and US military support have not helped Ukraine to push Russia back. Pope Francis, speaking to a Swiss broadcaster, said Ukraine should have the courage of the white flag. Negotiate is a courageous word, the leader of the Catholic Church told RSI. When defeated, you have to have the courage to negotiate. One may feel shame, but how many dead will the war end up with? The Russian Air Defense Forces shot down a Ukrainian MiG-29 jet and intercepted guided aerial bombs, multiple rockets and drones. The Ukrainian president has not commented on the Pope's remarks. On Friday, Volodymyr Zelensky met with Recep Tayyip Erdogan, where the Turkish leader said he would gladly host peace talks face-to-face between the two countries. Zelensky has said Russia must adhere to his 10-point plan, which includes safety guarantees and withdrawal of troops. Ukraine has been firm since the Russian invasion. It will not engage directly with Moscow. David Garrett, TVB News.
And still ahead, U.S. authorities launch a criminal investigation into the Boeing jetliner plug door blowout. The hospital authority will review its medication charges and dispensing mechanism. And the 3-day LIV Golf Hong Kong tournament draws to a close. Welcome back. The U.S. Department of Justice has reportedly launched a criminal investigation into the Boeing jetliner blowout that left a gaping hole on an Alaska Airlines plane this January. More on that in this NBC News report.
Tonight, the Justice Department now opening a criminal investigation into that mid-air scare on an Alaska Airlines flight involving a MAX 9 jet where a door plug blew out over Portland, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Journal reporting investigators contacting pilots, flight attendants, and even passengers on board Flight 1282 that was forced to make an emergency landing where fortunately no one was hurt.
Alaska 1282, district pressure.
The Justice Department provided no comment to NBC News. The focus of the investigation said to center on whether Boeing has complied with a previous settlement following a federal investigation into the airline's handling of the deadly jet crashes in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people. Today, the company providing no comment to NBC News.
They're going to look pretty seriously at, is this a one-off or is this systemic?
In a preliminary report last month, the NTSB found 4 bolts needed to keep the door plug in place were missing. Tonight, Alaska Airlines saying in a statement in part, "It's normal for the DOJ to be conducting an investigation. We are fully cooperating and do not believe we are a target of the investigation." News of the investigation comes as the NTSB has blasted Boeing for failing to turn in records about the blowout, a claim the company refutes. But in a letter this week to U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell, Boeing revealing they can't find any documentation on the removal of the door plug.
That's probably not a good answer either.
It's a horrible answer. And when I read that, I was shocked that, one, they don't have the documentation. They're required to have that documentation. And if not, then we're talking about a much deeper problem of procedural compliance.
Back locally, Hospital Authority Chairman Henry Fan said the body spent $9.6 billion on dispensing medication annually, accounting for around 10% of the HA's total expenditures. With that, the Hospital Authority will review its medication charges and the dispensing mechanism. Fan said currently specialist outpatient clinics charge $15 per type of medicine. Some patients are dispensed up to 16 weeks of medications, and that has caused much wastage of drugs, Fan said. During the fifth wave of the COVID pandemic, the Hospital Authority reduced the quantity of prescribed medicines to 4 weeks, and the outcome has been good. The HA will look into whether it's workable to limit the prescribed medicines to 4 weeks at all outpatient clinics, and then repeat the dispensing of medications. And there will be a review of the charges. Fan said the expenditures saved could be used to expand the list of subsidized drugs to improve care for the critically or terminally ill patients. Secretary for Health Lo Chung-mau said tobacco tax will not be the government's only measure aimed at reducing smoking in the city. He also said authorities hope to review within this year the initial plan on new medical charges at public hospitals. The Musangai reports.
With the new tobacco tax announced by the Financial Secretary in his recent budget address, each packet of cigarettes can now cost more than $90. This is the second straight year that the authorities have increased the tobacco tax. The government also revealed the tax will continue to rise in future, aiming to reach the 75% tax level advised by the World Health Organization. Secretary for Health Lo Chung-mau said on a TVB program that taxation is the most effective measure in reducing the smoking rate. The city hopes to lower smoking prevalence rate to 7.8% next year.
The effect is very obvious. The previous data was in the year 2021 when it's 9.5%. But we are quite confident that in the year 2023, there is a reduction in smoking prevalence again. So I would say this is one of the most effective measures. There's also evidence in the all over the world in other countries, and we will continue to make use of this as one of the measures, but it's not the only measure.
Lo said other measures include public education and a reduction in tobacco advertising and related products. He said the administration will announce details soon. Authorities earlier said they plan to review charges at public hospitals, including fees at accident and emergency departments.
Healthcare resources is really very precious. It's not just in terms of financial resources, money, but in terms of the human capital. We're not just looking at this to say that, oh, after so many years, we have to look at the inflation and we will just adjust it according to the inflation. That is not the objective. We want to focus on specific painful spots.
The Health Secretary said preliminary information of the review will be released within this year at the earliest. News 9, TVB News.
The three-day LIV Golf Hong Kong tournament drew to a close today. Some spectators said Hong Kong has reached an international level in organizing the showpiece. Several mainland tourists expressed hope that the city could host a golf event for the National Games in 2025.
Cool but drizzly weather marked this last and final day of the LIV Golf Hong Kong tournament. Undeterred by the rain, many arrived at the Fanling Golf Course 2 hours early, with some waiting for a photo op and an autograph from their favorite golfers. Also among the spectators were Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Yeung, Legislative Council President Andrew Leung and Peter Lam, Chairman of the Hong Kong Trade and Development Council. The LegCo President praised the event for having a great vibe, adding Hong Kong should hold more such mega events. It's the first time that Hong Kong staged a leg of the LIV Golf series.
Just be able to see players up front, top 100 players up front is amazing. Just too surreal. They better choose Hong Kong next time because I'll be back 100%, no doubt about that.
It's the best in Hong Kong so far, if not the best in Asia. We already have all these guys. They love Hong Kong. And the vibe is great, everything's great, the crowd is great, the music's great.
Guangdong, Hong Kong and Macau will co-host the 15th National Games in 2025. Some mainland spectators at LIV Golf Hong Kong hope the city can organize a golfing event for the national multi-sport showpiece. This tourist from Guangzhou said Hong Kong can reach an international level in holding such events and is more likely to invite golfing stars. This Shenzhen golfing fan added Hong Kong has a better golfing culture. Hong Kong has sought to host 8 sporting events in the 2025 National Games, including the track cycling and golf competitions, pending the approval of the General Administration of Sports of China. The decision is expected to be announced this year.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.